Hey folks, we're back with the dev stream, special Monday edition. Here, oh, hold on, what's going on? Sorry about that. The Twitch stream on the browser. One day we're gonna have a perfectly started stream, but until then, yeah, exactly. It's because I can't integrate the chat into the Streamlabs software because it's not my account. It's anyways. Uh, yeah, yeah. We should try to make the beginnings worse, maybe. Like just keep progressively getting. Anywho, yeah. Welcome back to the dev stream. We're doing a Monday edition here. I'm here with Christina as always. Today we're gonna be doing a installation of Forem on macOS. Before we get started, though, I'll just introduce myself and Christina. My name's Nick Taylor. I'm a senior software engineer here at Forem. Forem is the software that powers dev. And as always, Christina is by my side. What's up? Really? That's weird because I see your sound going and okay, snap. Oh, yeah, no, it's me. I was testing something.
Okay.
I didn't go through my checklist. That's my bad. So, yeah.
Oopsie.
So
You said we
yeah.
should make the beginning worse. Now it's
Yeah, so
worse.
it's getting worse, yeah. All right. Hey, Todd's there. Maybe link to 20.
Uh,
I'll
okay.
say
I'm
hi to folks in the
Christina.
chat while you introduce yourself.
Christina Gorton. I'm the open source community manager. I had an awful time trying to set up dev when I got hired. And so this is one of the reasons we decided to do this. We have other people who pair program with us. They've had difficulties since I'm in the issues. In GitHub, I see other people have difficulties installing, and so we thought it would be a good idea just kind of walking through this. Full disclosure, I've never actually gone through all of the steps because we got to one point when I was coming on and onboarding to where there was a problem and all of the team had to work together to fix it, and then we updated the documents, and then I just never finished. So that's part of our goals for today, getting me actually set up with
Yeah,
Forem
yeah.
here.
Yeah, so yeah, because you'd started that install and then Hacktoberfest was also happening, so we got pretty busy with that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so that's what we're gonna do. I'm hoping we run into issues because we the happy path works sometimes, but I would say most of the time somebody gets some weird obscure error, we don't know why, and we just got to figure out what it is, and we're gonna hopefully update the documentation with that. And these
Mhm.
recordings too are going to become part, at least for the installations, are going to be part of the documentation going forward, just to help out folks as well. So I'm going to share my
Yeah, if we're a little
screen.
bit serious when we're
Yeah.
actually talking about the steps, it's because we're going to edit this later and put them into the
Yeah,
documentation, so we might not be like this.
yeah, exactly. Did you want to go ahead and share your screen and we'll get started?
Yeah, I'm gonna share the screen and show you kind of. So today we're doing macOS, if we didn't mention that at first. And so let me screen share here. Let me know if when you see it.
Yeah, it's
You
up.
got
I
it?
see you got the docs
Okay.
up there. Okay.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so we are going to do macOS. There are other ways to install with Windows, Linux. There's other things you can do. Eventually, we would like to go through those steps as well on other streams. Today, we're focusing on macOS. I'm on a Mac. I've had the trouble with the Mac, so that's where we're starting today.
Yeah.
And so we want to walk through these. Not everything will be going through the steps and like actually putting into the commands, because I've done some of these already going through, but we're going to talk about why we have these things, why you need them. People who work with Ruby or maybe the backend a little bit more are familiar with a lot of these things, but I've noticed as the open source community manager and someone also who comes from this as front end, that all of these things aren't always so obvious to people who maybe don't work with the backend as much or maybe work with Ruby. And so we want to actually talk about like why we have some of these things, why you need them, and to be able to start contributing to Forem.
Yeah, and before we get started, you mentioned Ruby, and so I'm just going to explain briefly what Forum's built on. It's a Ruby on
Yep.
Rails app primarily, and then in the front end, there's some vanilla JS. We also use Preact for it's not a single page application, like I said. So it's Rails, so primarily server side rendered, and we use Preact to add interactions that make sense for typically the logged on user. There's a few other places where it's used too, but so it's kind of like little enhancements, so Preact and little pockets on the site and stuff. And there's like the other backend stuff that we can talk through once we're going through the installation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty much the lay of the land before we get started. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start out here with, this is me today. Nick is going to kind of teach me it, like treat me as the student kind of going through this and talking through. And I will happily admit to anything I was confused about and didn't understand, because I don't mind not knowing things. So one of the
Yeah.
first things that I was confused about for me was, so the first step is, okay, install Ruby. Make sure you have Ruby. On Mac, there's already Ruby installed, and so you have to. I guess there's like two that you're supposed to have. Did you have this problem, Nick, when you were installing?
Yeah, so the thing with Mac OS and it's not an issue on Windows, but on Mac OS it ships with a version of Ruby. I can't remember which version. I think it's like it's 2 point something, but and it also ships with a version of Python. And anybody that does any kind
Yeah.
of Python work or Ruby, uh, you can't just update those system versions because there's stuff in the operating system that uses them. So what you have to do is you have to use a version manager for that language. So the one we're using, for example, for Ruby, it's called RBEMV. And what that allows us is you can have different versions of Ruby running on a per project basis. Uh, in our case, we're really only working on one project, but it leaves the system Ruby version intact so that the operating system or any underlying things it uses still functions properly. And
Hmm.
we're able to use the version we need for our own project by using the version manager. So that's the reason why you need to have the two.
Yeah. So to
Yeah.
make anyone feel better, step one was a problem for me. Going through step one, I had to figure that out. I wasn't aware of that. And so if you don't already have Ruby version manager, they tell you, they recommend Airbnb. What did you call it? Airbnb? Airbnb.
I don't know actually how you're supposed to say it. I say RBEMV just because maybe
Okay, there we
maybe
go.
it's probably RBEMV like environment, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm going with RBEMV. Come get me.
Okay. So I did not have this on my Mac at the time. And so they tell you should go through the installation guide, which they have here. And so this is what I did. I went through on my Mac OS. I think at the time, because this was a newer one, I wasn't even sure. No, I did have uh, some other stuff, but I had to go through and I did brew install, and you just follow these and it's not a big deal. Like these steps were not bad to
Yeah.
go through. So I'm not sure we necessarily even have to go through those ones,
Yeah.
but you do need to make sure that you have this before you go on to the next step.
Yeah, and
And
the
then go ahead.
I was just gonna say on a Mac OS, there's a very useful tool called Homebrew. It's not installed
Yeah.
by default, but it mentions it in the RBEMV or RBMV installation
Hmm.
documentation. So a lot of folks will install packages or software through Homebrew on Mac, so that you can see here in the RBEMV installation docs, they say set up Homebrew, and then you write brew like brewing a coffee, I guess, and then brew install, and you
Hmm.
choose what you want. So I think you said you had already installed that. Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe we can make sure. What do you know the command to make sure that I have it?
I think if you
Okay,
just
I guess
go,
I can just do the init.
yeah, or if you go into the console, sorry, the terminal, one you can check. I'm pretty sure you have brew installed. If you just type brew, it'll probably
Yeah, I have
say
Brew. I had
okay.
to go through. I actually think I ended up having to go through installing Brew because this was a newer computer when I started doing this. So if you don't have that, you do. This is one of those annoying things, like as you're a developer and you're like, okay, next step. Wait, I don't have this step. So you have to keep going through the links here. You might have to go through the homebrew installation.
Yeah.
I do have Brew installed already.
Okay. Cool.
And I know I went through this stuff, so I'm pretty sure I have all of this as well.
Okay.
So,
Also, that's
um,
external documentation, so that it's just to say get
yes.
RBAMV installed. So, okay. So now let's just make sure you should. Uh, One thing I'm noticing is in the documentation is the command in step 2 is saying RBAMV install cat and then the file name .ruby version. That is a file in
Mhm.
our repository. So I think one thing to take note of is to clone, fork, and get the repo first. I don't know where we mentioned that in the steps. It was kind of
I'm
implied
glad
by a
you
lot of us.
mentioned that. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was the other thing that I ended up having a problem with was that it wasn't necessarily that they tell you immediately to fork and clone. That is something I did want to add to the documentation anyway, so that's a good thing that you
Cool.
brought that up as a point. Not everyone's aware. I think most people, when they go to open source project, they know that they should fork and clone that repo. But if you didn't know that and you
Yeah.
hadn't gone through those steps yet, that is something you need to do. So that's something that we need to go back and make sure that we have clearer. You want to go ahead and fork and clone, which I do already have a fork of Forem.
Okay. Perfect. So what we can do is we can run the step 2 if I don't know if you want to share your whole desktop or just share uh, perhaps your
Let me
terminal
see.
where you're
Hold
doing
on.
all the installation.
Let me try to get this bigger real quick.
Yeah. While Christina's doing that, I'll just explain what the command does. Our bend installs a Ruby version, but for those little less familiar with Linux commands, cat is a command that gets you the contents of a file. So when you do cat.ruby version, it returns a number. So for example, 2.7.1. So what that command will do is rbenv install 2.7.1 of Ruby. Um, cool.
Me. Now I'll have to make sure I still actually have this cloned. We may end up with a problem here. Hold on.
Okay.
Space. Okay. So, so I probably don't. Let's go through here. No such file, so I must not have it actually
Okay.
cloned anymore. I do have a
Okay.
fork of it. I don't have it pulled down as a clone. So this is a likely something that you'll see. And I think the first time I did this, I saw this too, and I was just like, wait, what? What happened? Um, so we got a comment in there, Nick, if you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
check that out, see if you can
Yeah.
fix that.
Okay. 720 is hard to read. Yeah. I'll check it out. I don't think I can really stop the stream now, but uh, I'll have to do. I think I'm gonna have to do that for the next one. I'll take a peek while you're loading
Hmm.
up your terminal there, Christina. I'll take a peek because I
Hmm.
know. I know you can configure. Usually, I have like a super fast connection and pretty
Oops, wrong one.
decent.
That's not what I
I
want
don't.
to go to.
Oh, my stream is at 60
Okay.
minutes. Okay. Yeah, at Hell and Earth is. I'm gonna have to look at that after the stream, I think, because I'm pretty sure I have to stop it unless somebody else knows on the stream right now if I can actually do that while I'm streaming.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 minute just so I can get something up real quick that I don't want to share everything else with. So give me
Yeah.
1 second.
Okay.
Uh,
But yeah, thanks, Hell on Earth is for mentioning that because that was something I was completely unaware of.
Yeah, we're happy to definitely help out wherever we can with stuff like that. If
Yeah.
there's something on the stream that could be easier for people, please let us know. So definitely appreciate that. Okay, so go back to sharing.
Yep. Yeah, because right now there's a big picture of you on the street. Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Let me get that back up and then my terminal. Okay, so what I did, I didn't have the clone. It's still going. It's gonna take a minute. I hadn't had the clone version anymore down on my computer.
Okay, so yeah, so let's
So
pull it
I went
down.
into GitHub and I got, the here, and then I'm cloning. Of course, I need to get my forked version, don't I? Dang it.
Yeah. Now there's two ways you can clone it. Christina's
Yeah.
cloned it with HTTPS, but
Mm-hmm.
with HTTPS, you'll have if you push changes, you'll have to uh, you'll have to add your username and password when you do pushes. Uh, I would
Mm-hmm.
recommend using SSH instead. It's kind of outside of the realm of our installation documentation, but it's something you can find on GitHub. We should probably link to it anyways.
Okay.
Configuring SSH for Git. I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm pretty sure that they have it on GitHub. All this information. I did it a while ago, so it's something I never think about. But
Yeah.
it doesn't affect the installation that we're doing today. That's more just an aside. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I actually need to go get my forked version, so give me a second because I was trying to clone the other version. So let's go
okay,
to my repositories.
okay,
And then I need to find Forem. There we go.
all right,
All
cool.
right, that's the one I want to clone. Okay, so talking here, the HTTPS or the SSH. For now, do you think I should just stick with one, or do you want me to go
Uh,
with one
no,
of the other ones?
it's okay as long as you've cloned it. It's okay. My comment was
Mhm.
more about if you're trying to push your changes and stuff.
Gotcha.
So this will work fine.
Okay, now we're cloning my fork of the repo.
Yeah,
And we're doing this so that we can do step 2. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
why we're going through all this right now.
Okay.
So at this point, you should have Ruby installed. You should have a the rbinv or rbnv env. I have no idea what it is. This right here. And then we're trying to get to the point where we can do step 2. So what we didn't have in the documentation that we think we need to add and that we should make clearer for everyone, not assuming what people know, is
Yeah,
that we should tell them they need to fork and clone the repo.
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right,
Okay,
I got the
and we're
chat
just
open here.
waiting on my terminal. So
Yeah,
it's going to be a minute before we get there.
yeah. So one thing to mention about the installation is it really will. This is really only for the first time, but depending on your internet
Mm-hmm.
connection speed, it might take a little while to download the repo. There's a lot of things in there. Uh, it is quite a large
Yeah.
project. I don't mean that to
Mm-hmm.
intimidate you. It's really more your connection speed really affects how fast you'll get the repo and stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
cool.
Okay, so I know from experience from the last time that this will take a little bit for me to get that cloned. So let's
Okay.
talk about some of the other stuff before that we would be doing in the next few steps, if you want to. Like, do you want to explain a little bit about the post?
Yep.
Sorry, coughing. The image magic and Redis and stuff. So if you want to explain those a little bit while we're
Yeah,
waiting for my stuff to clone.
sure. If you don't mind, just putting back up the browser window you had open there, or do you want me to share my screen while
Um,
you're doing it?
oh, am I not sharing any?
No, no, I'm seeing
Oh
you. I
wait,
see
it's
your
just.
terminal.
I wonder why it's only showing that. Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing and then go back.
Yeah.
There we go.
S-
I think it's just
cool.
because it picked that one.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
All right. All right. So
Sorry about that.
yeah.
I thought I was pointing at it the whole time.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, so the other thing we're going to be installing is Yarn for folks that have worked in the front end. Yarn is an alternative to NPM. We went with that a few years ago. It was just decided at the time. Yarn was a lot faster than NPM, and I believe it still is. And honestly, it's just a choice. You can install it with npm, but the thing is, we have a yarn lock file, which npm has a package lock.json. It's similar. I don't think it would really affect your installation, but we recommend and use yarn in the project for installing npm dependencies. The other things that we're going to look through here is we use Postgres SQL for database. So we need to install that. That's what, with a Rails application, you can have different, I don't know all the supported databases. I know MySQL, Postgres, I think maybe Mongo too, but we use Postgres. So we're going to
Mhm.
install that after. The easiest way to do that is on a Mac is with the Postgres app, which will be, so it comes with a GUI client, a graphical user
Mhm.
interface. You can install it through Brew too. I think that's how I have it set up, but either way, we'll get that on.
Mhm.
ImageMagick is another dependency. This is all back-end stuff. The ImageMagick is what allows us to resize images. So if you're writing a post on Dev and you upload a photo for the cover image, for example, it will resize it using ImageMagick. Aside from that, we have Redis. Redis is a server for caching, and hope I am explaining this one correctly. But as far as I know, it replaces the default caching available in Rails, I believe. So
Okay.
the way the Rails app is set up, you can kind of plug in whichever kind of caching you'd like to. So we use Redis for caching, and in regards to caching, for those who aren't aware, uh, the we rely heavily on caching. Dev, which is the primary Forem instance, that's probably the most well known. Uh, it relies heavily on caching. So because we're primarily a content based site, there is dynamic stuff in the application, but for the most part, people are reading posts or looking at listings and so on. So all that stuff gets cached, and there's also portions of the your stream disappeared for a sec. It's back. Uh, there's portions of the page that will get cached so that it loads faster because for example, like anybody that's ever done any WordPress, they have these caching plugins, and what it does is instead of rebuilding that portion of the page every time by going to the database and stuff, once it's got that part that is fairly static, it just keeps it in memory in the cache. So that's why we have Redis. And
Mhm.
then aside
Nick,
from,
do you
yeah,
know if Redis replaces Spring? I know nothing about this, so I'm asking you if you know. That's what someone asked.
uh, I'm not familiar with Spring. I'm actually I haven't done that much Rails myself, but the only Spring I know
Hmm.
of is from Java, which I think is for like an ORM maybe. But uh, Lilioo is Spring what comes out of the box with Rails for caching?
Yeah,
I'll wait till they
and if you
respond.
have a link, well,
Yeah.
check that out too.
Or-
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take a peek in there though. I'll look up for Spring Rails. Application preloader. It speeds up development in the background. Okay. Um, I don't. From what I'm reading briefly about Spring, it seems to be. What is the function of a Spring server in Ruby on Rails? Let's see here real quick. Spring is a Rails application preloader. It speeds up development by keeping your application running in the background, so you don't need to boot it every time you run a test, rake task, or migration. Okay. That I don't know if we're using or not. So I don't have a good answer for that, but I think
Yeah.
that's related. Spring seems to be related more to development time. Redis is really for the actual application in
Okay.
production. So I don't think it replaces it, but we can definitely take note of that to take a peek. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
We can
Uh,
come back to Elasticsearch, I think, because this one was the one that caused me personally the problems that like made it so I had to stop. So we can kind of talk through the stuff that we already changed in the documentation there for anyone who's done
yep.
this before, trying to get Forem and why it might be different now. And then we can also just kind of work through that because I'm still not even sure if I ended up following those directions at the end after I've changed the documentation for it. So we can come back to
Yeah.
that after my stuff loads.
Okay.
But yeah, these are the things you need. Do you want to give a high level? And you kind of covered that a little bit, but do you want to give a high level of why you need these things
Yeah.
when you're trying to get started?
Uh, and even though you're doing local development, this is how the application primarily works. One, you absolutely need a database because we're not a it's it's a content-based site, but we also have settings and stuff like your user profiles and all that. So like most applications, you typically need a database. Um, the image magic, like I said, that's really just for image resizing. As far as I know, the main places it's used are like when you're creating a post in terms of the cover image, and I believe it's also when you upload images for the body of your post. Uh, I
Hmm.
think it might be used in a few other places too that aren't necessarily for the user, but like the application uses it. And
Okay.
yeah, and like I was saying, Redis, the application relies heavily on caching. There's a few levels of caching. We use for those who are more front end centric. We also use service workers. So you'll see like the shell of the application, like the top bar, the sidebars and stuff. Whenever you go to the site, those will
Hmm.
always appear first, and then content will be injected on the inside of that. Um, there's other types of caching too. We use local storage for some user information, which isn't sensitive information. It's more like, your name, maybe some articles you've bookmarked and so on. There's no sensitive
Hmm.
information there. Um, Aside from that, I think that's the other thing is we do edge caching. We rely on that heavily. Dev I know uses Fastly, but I think with Forem instances, because Fastly is a paid product,
Okay.
from what I remember having conversations with some folks, so that part's been abstracted out of the Forem application so that it's not hard coded with Fastly because it gives the other folks
Okay.
the option to use other things. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, we use Fastly and edge caching. I'm definitely not super well versed in it, but
Yeah.
think of it like a CDN as close to where you are, and things get served up from there. And all these caching mechanisms are really to avoid load on your own actual server. Like the server's job primarily is to build this initial content. Like if I create a blog post, all that's going to get cached. uh, what'll happen is if I make edits to my article, it will get
Hmm.
invalidated out of the cache, meaning it gets kind of purged out. And then the next time somebody
Okay.
goes to look at my blog post, it will get cached, and then subsequent folks will just see the cache version. So it
Okay.
so that and this is also all this caching put in place is what makes dev and forum instances super fast. It's something
Yeah.
we've repeatedly heard from folks. I'm not saying this to brag. It's just the way things are architected. We by relying so much on this caching, it's like a superpower kind of in terms of performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
I
feel like,
see.
and this is an aside since I'm still waiting, do you feel like do you feel like all the caching as far as the developer makes it more difficult, like especially if you're doing front end stuff? Does that cause you issues?
uh, It depends. I think when we're in development mode, a lot of the caching is disabled or it just automatically gets it all the time. So
Okay.
that you don't. So, like, for example, if I make changes to CSS, we use Sass for CSS. If I make
Hmm.
changes in the Sass, the CSS will get rebuilt, and then the next page refresh, I will see the new CSS.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
Also, just to explain a bit about the development cycle, like if you're doing stuff in the front end, we there's a few parts to how the front end gets built. There's the Ruby on Rails asset pipeline. It uses a gem called sprockets, and this is high level. What it does is all JavaScript that you write in files, you include them in this Ruby template file. And then what it does is it concatenates all those JavaScript files and then it compresses them. And then that's what you get for JavaScript for a Rails application. And in terms of CSS, it builds the Sass and generates the necessary CSS files. But the other thing we have as well is we use Webpack in the application as well. There's a Ruby gem called Webpacker. I believe as of Rails 6.0, it ships with Rails by default, but our project existed prior to that. So, but we have Webpacker in the application, and what that does is that allows us to it kind of hooks Webpack into a Ruby on Rails application so that because we're not a single page application. It's like for anybody that's done like Create React app or any Webpack based single page application, it doesn't work the same way. Um,
Hmm.
so typically typically in a front end single page application, you have if you're using Webpack, you have something called an entry point, and think of that like your index.js if you're in a Create React app, for example. And then from there, Webpack does its magic, like splitting files and stuff, and it knows how to optimize it. There's tweaks you can do. But in our
Hmm.
case, that entry point, we have many of them because we're not a single page application. So we'll have pockets of Preact components in certain spots. So for example,
Hmm.
if you go to a article on dev and there's a
Uh-huh.
subscribe button at the bottom, that subscribe button is actually a Preact component. It gets loaded server side first, so there's no like real flashing of content, but then Preact takes over there, and that's like there's an entry point. I'll link it in the chat in a second so folks can read up on it.
Hmm.
Uh, but there'll be an article entry point. There's like a main page entry point. The onboarding has its own entry point. So uh, entry point just really means like the initial JavaScript file that kicks off whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, just in terms of the development, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because when you make changes to the stuff that Sprockets handles, the page doesn't reload. Like for those used to hot reloading in like say Create React app or like Vue, Svelte, all those. So, but if you're working on the Preact components or anything that is essentially ES modules, those
Yeah.
things will the page will get reloaded when you make those changes. Um, but I I believe it does a full page reload because it's got hot reloading, but I think it's the way it's set up. It doesn't do it like where it just injects like the change you made, and I think it's because we're mainly a Rails app. It's not single page. I think that's why. I'm not positive. Um,
Okay.
so there's that. I'm gonna just link those things
Yeah.
into the chat.
Yeah. And once you're done with
Uh,
that, we can finally start going through the steps because my thing has cloned.
okay, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna put a link to the front end documentation because it's got different sections in there. You can see there's
Mhm.
one for Webpacker. It talks about the front end assets with sprockets and so on. So folks can check that out. Okay, so you said you did it finish cloning?
Yeah, so tell me, can you see my terminal? Because I think
Uh,
I can only either show my terminal or show a page, so I'm not sure.
yeah, no, I see the web page right now.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna have to stop sharing again real quick and then share again so that you can see my terminal. The only problem now is that we won't be able to show like the steps along with doing this, but we'll be typing them into the terminal.
I think
Um,
I think you can share your full screen in Discord though, like if you want to. Uh,
okay, let me
I
see. Let me experiment for 1 second. If it
yeah,
takes too long, then we'll. So
I,
okay,
I
share screen.
I'm saying that
So
assuming there's nothing questionable on your
oh
desktop.
no, here it is. Here it is. It's because in Discord, in case anyone doesn't know, they give you these options of either you can share just the application or screens. And I was in applications. So if I go to
Okay.
screens, then it will share. So now you should be able to see both. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, cool. Yeah, let me pop it up because
Okay. Beautiful.
cool, cool. All right, yeah, I see both now. So you can put them side by side if you want. And just for the folks
Yeah.
at home, I whenever I'm working in the terminal or sometimes even the browser, I'll zoom in a bit. Just it's a little easier for folks to read. So I don't know if you're using iTerm too or what, but I'm not sure how you zoom that up. But
It's just Command plus. I'm just gonna find. Oh, hold on a
yeah.
second. My lovely Bluetooth keyboard is like, hey, you haven't messed with me in a while. Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit
Do you
better.
think that's good? Okay.
Yeah,
Let me also make
if
this a little bit
yeah,
bigger.
yeah,
Okay.
folks in the chat, if you're having trouble seeing the screens, just let us know and we'll zoom in some more.
Yeah.
And shout out to Todd for lobster emojis, he's staying on brand as always.
Okay,
Cool.
so what I want you to do, Nick, is I want you to pretend like it's my first day again at Forum.
Let's go
And
back in time.
you're my, yeah, let's go back. Not that long ago, but let's go back. And you are my buddy for the day, right? You're helping me get all set up. And
Okay.
so what we're going to do is then we're going to start walking through this. So again, what I've done so far, for those who are just joining, we made sure that we had a Ruby version installed, not the same one that already comes with your Mac OS because that causes conflicts. And then we have installed R, B, E, and V through the installation guide. I already had that, so I knew that was already installed. And then we had to go, and what it doesn't say in the docs, we had to go and we had to fork and clone the repo. And so that's something we'll be adding to the docs to make clear. And from that point, we can now install the .ruby version, which is inside of our project.
Cool, cool.
So
All right.
go ahead.
I will be your
Tell me
tour
what
guide
you
of
want
our
me to
code
do.
base for today. My name's Nick
Yeah.
Taylor. Please stay on the path. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to get the correct version of Ruby. So you've cloned the repository now. That's
Mm-hmm.
repo for short, Christina was mentioning for anybody new to open source. So
Mm-hmm.
first thing we need to do is we need to switch to the folder because you cloned it, but when you clone it, it creates a
Yeah.
folder from wherever you cloned it. So in your projects folder that you have
Mm-hmm.
open there, you're gonna need to cd
Yep.
to Forem. I'm assuming it's called Forem
Okay.
because
Yeah, we can just grab it, and I always find that easier, but that's gonna take me a second. Hold on. So we got our projects open. Yeah, it's just called form. I just wanted to
yeah,
make sure. Okay, let's go back
yeah,
to giant terminal.
yeah, and just share the docs as well too on this side.
Yep, I'm getting it again. I just have to get it up again. Oh, why don't you like me,
Is
Mac?
that
What's going on?
Bilbo Baggins in the background there?
So this is Studio Ghibli's version of the Shire.
Okay,
So, yes, that's either Frodo or Bilbo, probably Bilbo. But yeah.
yeah.
All right. going away
Okay.
from that.
Yeah, Gandalf's just chilling on the
Ah,
side,
hold
going for
on
a
a
walk.
second. Let me put them both up. I know how to computer, I swear. Some days.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay, so yeah,
Okay,
so let's cd to the forum folder.
there we go.
And okay, so from there now we can run that command in step 2 that you see in the documentation, rbamv
Hmm.
install $cat.ruby version.
Yeah,
And like I
I'm gonna copy it.
mentioned,
I probably could have even done this, by the way, since I had it already. But there we go.
okay, yeah, cool. So like I mentioned, the cat command, for those not familiar, just say yes, because
Hmm. I was just
uh,
letting you talk, but yes, go
yeah.
ahead.
So, like I mentioned, the cat command in Linux, for those not familiar with it, what it does is it gets the file contents of a file. So in our case, the .ruby version file, it has just one line in it, and it says 2.7.1. And this is how you're able to switch between versions of Ruby if you have other projects that you're working on in Ruby. So if you
Hmm.
have rbemv installed, all you need to do is create this .ruby version file, and then that way you can switch seamlessly between projects. Um, the other thing too to note, uh, with with our project, we do upgrade the Ruby version whenever the versions do get updated. So
Hmm.
occasionally, what you'll see happen sometimes is if you're working in the repository and you've forked and cloned the repository and you're working on a pull request, and then you go to push the changes, and then somebody says, can you merge the latest from the master branch? We still have to change that to main, by the way. That's a side note. But um,
Hmm.
what'll happen sometimes is the Ruby version will get incremented, and you try to run things, and all of a sudden you're going to get errors, or it's going to talk about not finding gems and stuff. So what you'll need to do at that point, uh, internally, we typically tell like other folks on the team that the version upgraded, but I, I wonder if I don't know if it's worth communicating that off forum.dev. Maybe it is. So basically, when something like that happens, you just need to rerun rbemv install cat.ruby version, because then whatever the version is there, it will go and install it. And
I think it could be beneficial to maybe put like a little warning or note or something under this in the Ruby docs or in the docs that we have for macOS,
yeah,
just so people are aware, like as they're contributing. So
cool,
that's
cool.
another good point.
Yeah. All right,
Uh,
cool.
and yeah, still installing. It's gonna take a minute.
Yeah, so it's installing Ruby, but Ruby also has some dependencies. OpenSSL is
Hmm.
for security. There's a few things it installs. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah,
Well,
so
you said the Postgres is through an app. Is that something we can do separately right now then?
yeah, you definitely can. So there's other ways to do it, but let's go with what we have in the
Hmm.
documentation here. So what you need to do
Yeah.
is you go to the postgres.app, the purple link in our documentation, and
Hmm.
at this point you just follow the instructions that come with this. But typically it's you download it and then you open it. It's a DMG file, which is a typical package format in Mac,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then you'll install
Um,
that.
yeah, I already have it installed, so I'm not going to go through
Ha.
those steps again, but that is what you would go through. So,
Okay. So
I just realized I actually already went through all this. So,
okay. All
um,
right, cool.
yeah.
And as mentioned, this is external documentation, but so if you did have problems installing the Postgres app, I would check out their
Mm-hmm.
documentation first. Obviously, we can definitely help too, but I would defer to their documentation first. And
Yep.
you can actually open the Postgres app if you don't mind, because we will need it to be running when we do all this. And
Hmm.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
I have
that's
it open.
documented. Do you know if that's documented that it has to be running? I know it sounds
I
obvious when
don't
I say it, but
know. It's not though. So this is the other thing that maybe I complained about too much when I first got hired on, was that these things aren't necessarily obvious, right? I do a lot of documentation. I've changed a lot of documentation for other people, and that's one of those things that I think is assumed. Um, is that we don't say that this. I think maybe we do now for Elasticsearch. I can't remember, but there's a couple of them that we don't say like they have to be running. And
Okay.
it's one of those things that you're just like, oh wait, okay, I downloaded this, and now what? So I think yeah, that's another point that we should make that explicit that this needs to be running.
Yeah.
So
So
I think we did change the language a little bit. So we said Forem requires it to run.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
but
Maybe
yeah,
we
I
can
think
be
we
more
could maybe even do
explicit.
a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yep.
figure being more explicit is always better, for folks who are like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Yeah, I know I need to start it, but I don't know. I would rather be like, you kind of and like you said, it's because folks. I mean, the documentation is definitely being improved in several iterations, but I like anybody that's worked on a project for a while, stuff that seems obvious, you don't clue in sometimes that you need to be more explicit about stuff. Uh, and
Yeah.
that's not just our documentation, that's just in general. That's why it's kind of
Mhm.
nice when you onboard new folks, you say, here you go. And then they find holes in what, like, even if you've been improving it all the time, every time somebody new comes in,
Mhm.
there's always something missing. So it's always, it's, I've found it's been a great way to improve onboarding by updating the documentation as soon as you run into issues. Uh,
Yeah.
and it also helps folks, like if somebody's going to ask a question, well, this didn't do that, and then it, sparks a conversation too, so maybe something isn't clear as well, so
Hmm.
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Now,
Okay, so
now,
just to say, after you go to the postgres.app, you have all that installed. If you open it up, it will just start saying it's running, just so you know. So
yeah,
I have mine up and it is running. So
yeah. You want to drag it over
uh,
onto the other screen just so we can see it?
yeah, it won't let
Uh,
me now that I have these two things up.
okay, that's all. It's all good.
As full things. So
I see the genie effect flying back and forth.
yeah. As soon as I tried to drag it over there, and then I was like, wait, I have these both open to their full things. And now
Okay.
it won't let me.
Now
So yeah, so I can show it in just a little bit after we go through some of these, and we have some of
okay.
the other things open.
I think you might have run into an error here because I'm pretty sure when I ran into an error like this, I wrote documentation, I updated the documentation about it. It's
Okay,
saying
so
Ruby build using readline from Homebrew, and
uh-huh.
I think it's gonna hang there. If you look for
Okay.
readline in the documentation,
Okay. Hold on.
yeah, okay,
This one.
not that one. Where is it? Yeah, I guess
Uh-huh.
search a few.
There's
Uh,
another read line. I think those are the only two read lines in here.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna hang here. And I could have
Uh-huh.
sworn this was in the documentation. Do you want to go to the top of the documentation, or you're in mobile view? So if you open up the hamburger, oh no, there's the search documentation. Just type in read line, all one word in the docs there.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, it's just here. Okay,
Yep.
okay,
So yeah, it's just that one error.
okay. So if you go into your terminal and you copy that line, Ruby build using read line from Homebrew,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll need
Yep.
to add this to the docs. So if you just Google
Okay.
that, I'm pretty sure there's going to be something about like, yeah, rbem install hangs. Yeah, that's the issue.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is something we'll need to add to it. And I could have sworn I added this to the documentation at some point, but um, yeah, so
Okay.
it's
So
not erroring out, but
hold
it's it's
give
saying
me one
read
second.
line.
This
Yeah.
kid's yelling at me just one.
That's right, folks, real life. Pandemic rules. All right.
This is almost worth canceling the stream because apparently there's this sloth on the road. But
Oh, no way. They, they don't come down to the ground often. For those just tuning in, Christina
So,
lives in Costa Rica, so
yeah, my kids are yelling at me that there's a sloth on the road. We saw a sloth this morning, and a tree, and apparently now it's on the road. So
um,
that's what they're yelling at me about. Okay.
yes. So I think
But I'm a
yeah.
professional, so I'm not going to go run after the sloth right now, even if I want to.
Yeah, I only mute my kids when they're screaming. Uh, yeah, so in the command here, I think we'll need to copy everything before the rbenv, and I think we'll need to add that to the installation documentation. That if folks
Okay.
if folks end up seeing that Ruby build using readline from Homebrew and like after a couple
Mm-hmm.
minutes it's not doing anything, you'll
Uh-huh.
need to add this. And what that it's
Um, it stopped hanging though for a minute. I mean, I don't know if it
oh
actually installed or not, but it says installed.
oh okay, all right, so I guess you're good. Um, but I would
But that
keep
is, no, I think we should still add that. Yeah.
yeah it, and I don't know what the scenario is when it doesn't work, but I've had it hang on me before and I had to do that. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe we can just add some supplemental documentation that if you're stuck on that
Yeah.
line saying using readline, maybe try this.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely add
Uh,
that.
okay. So, okay, perfect.
Okay, Abby. Sorry. My children are yelling at me. They're very, very excited. Apparently this sloth's up at my house right now.
For those
Oh, it's
wondering why you
happening.
can't hear, but
Look at the sloth.
we both use some AI software to filter out background noise, which is why you probably can't hear the kids screaming.
Yeah.
um,
They're slamming on my door. They're coming to my window and yelling at me that there's a sloth right outside my door apparently. So, yeah.
all right, so so we've
Okay.
got Ruby
Move
installed
on.
now. If we
Yeah.
go back to your fourth tab there, yeah, we'll go back to the installation. So Ruby's installed. Yarn says refer to their installation guide. We
I think I have that.
yeah, but there's
Hmm.
something
Yep. Nice.
important to note here that Node.js should be installed first. We have documentation about installing Node.js, but it should happen before
Okay.
here because the the easiest way to install Yarn is to install it. Even though you end up using Yarn, the easiest way to install it is do npm install -g for global and then Yarn. So I would take note of that and run
Okay.
Node first. But
Hmm.
once again, this is external documentations, but and you have Yarn installed already, so uh, I would just say for now defer to that. But we should do the Node.js installation because I don't even remember where it is in the documentation. If you go to the search at the top, just see
Yeah.
if you type Node. I know there's yeah, you see there's
So
not
in
even a
Windows
mention,
and in Linux,
but
I
not in Mac.
maybe they, yeah. So
And
hold
I'm
on.
pretty sure this was
Uh,
omitted
ah.
because probably when this doc was written, maybe everybody had Node on their computer and just completely forgot about it. So
Hmm.
yeah, so
So
there's
okay, we
NVM.
could
Yeah,
just, yeah, we can just make sure we go back and add this stuff to our
yeah,
Mac section. Yeah.
yeah. And quick question: are you taking note of that, or should I be taking note of that?
I'm going to be going back and taking note of, I since I have this video and I'll be editing and everything, I'll be going back
Okay,
and doing that.
cool, cool. All right. So Yarn's installed. Uh, at this.
Oh, I'm gonna
Okay.
mute again for 1 second.
All right. While she listens to the sloth troubles. Yeah, that's what we're using, Todd. Crisp. Yeah, it's pretty solid. I had the free version, which is like 120 minutes per week free, and I was using that for Zoom calls, and it worked great. But once I started streaming a lot, I just bought the subscription. It was worth it to me, because right now on the stream, even though I don't have screaming kids behind me right now, I have an air filter running that's super, well, it's not super noisy, but it sounds like wind and you know, my Mac sounds like an airplane right now just because of everything running on it. So, but you don't hear any of that. So yeah, definitely check out Crisp. It's crisp.ai, and like I said, you can get 120 minutes free a week, and if you end up using it more, I think it's pretty solid. And Christina's had it for a while too. So do you
So
how's the sloth doing?
apparently, I guess something maybe grabbed the sloth out of the tree and then dropped it near our garden.
Okay.
So it's their house, and my parents are watching my kids, and they're freaking out because they haven't been here. They just got here. I guess everyone's freaking out. So
Okay.
I may need to take a 5 minute walk outside real quick and calm everyone down. I apologize, everyone. There's a sloth emergency apparently. So I will be right back, Nick. I'm sorry for doing that.
uh, that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna share my screen in
Um,
the meantime.
yes. Yeah, let
So
me stop
just give me a
sharing
sec.
and then I will be right.
All right. I need to share my screen. Let's share it over here. Yep. There we go. Cool. All right, and I've got Inception going on, obviously here. All right, let's do this. Hopefully that's not gonna work. Man. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop sharing for a sec. I'm gonna share it on my other screen. Just means I'm going to be looking to the left, which is not a big deal, but let's see here. Okay, back. And let's come back. Screen. Yeah, this guy. All right, cool. And we got my Discord. You can see all my Discords there. Good stuff, I guess. All right, cool. Let's open that, and I'm gonna bring that over here. You're gonna get to see my side profile while I'm looking over there. Yeah, so while Christina's out for the moment, right, and that's also shout out to 2020 dumpster fire of a year, as we all know. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, yeah. Sorry about the recursion there. Oh man, cool. All right, so yeah, so then there's the Elasticsearch, Redis. Okay, yeah. So at this point, uh, Christina's already installed Postgres, so that's all good to go and it's up and running. The next thing we need to do is do brew install image magic. As we mentioned, this is for manipulating images on the server, typically for uh, your article content, so your cover image or any images you upload. And yeah, that's pretty much there. I can't do it on her computer because she's not there, obviously, and I don't have access to her screen. But and then we're gonna install Redis. These things all install fairly quickly, and I can show you on my screen. I'm just gonna, you get to see my side profile again here. So come over here. That's just Webpack, but let's bring this up and let's just stop my server. Let's clear that, and I'll just boost it up a bit. And let's make it super big. Cool. Let's clear that. And let's check it. Master. Oh yeah, I got stuff in here. And I mentioned it.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? Here, let me stop sharing my screen. How's Slothgate going?
So have you ever seen an octopus squeeze itself through like impossible little holes?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So the sloth just did that through my garden gate.
Okay. And it got stuck, or
No, it squeezed through. Like we have this cow. I guess it's cow fencing, not chicken fencing because it's bigger. It's like this big. But this gigantic sloth just squeezed its whole body through one of those little sections. So I'm just letting it do its thing. I told everyone to leave it alone. It will find a tree. It'll be okay.
Yeah. All right.
Uh,
So I was doing a little improv. I was doing shadow puppets and like drawing
nice,
rainbows. Yeah. So
nice, nice.
so let's get back to sharing your screen
Yep.
post Slothgate, and I
That's
imagine that
it's definitely the part I'm gonna have to edit out.
yeah no, that'll be in the blooper highlights. Um,
Yeah.
but I imagine it squeezed through the fence very very slowly.
Yeah. I have two mastiffs at my house right now, so I'm pretty sure it was just trying to get away from my dogs.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, those are massive dogs. Like those can take out a human easily.
yeah.
They're like
So,
what, like 120, 120 pounds. It's like I
yeah.
don't know how many stones that is, but yeah, it's
Yeah. Yep. 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 I mean, they didn't really seem to care about it, but I think it was pretty sure it shouldn't be around here with the mastiff around. Okay.
all right.
So,
Let's install Image Magic.
okay. So I'm gonna do the brew install that we have here.
Yep. And for those that are while that she's running that, just to mention, uh, Brew has been installed on her computer. There's documentation that links to their to the homebrew documentation if you want to get that set up.
Mhm.
It's pretty handy for installing a lot of things on Mac OS, and a lot of the things in the documentation will use it. You can see even for Redis, we're doing brew install for that too.
Mhm.
Think of it, it's kind of like, think of it like npm or yarn for your Mac. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I- I'm just trying to think.
Well, apparently it's updating homebrew, so.
I think that's, well, no, I think what it does when you do the install is I think it adds Image Magic to the list of things you have installed. That's the updating
Mm.
part, and
Oh,
then
okay.
then
Then
it
that
is.
works.
But yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, so once that installs, we'll head over to Redis. Installing Redis is fun because the test for it is if you scroll down a bit, you say you run their CLI and you say ping and it responds with
Uh-huh.
pong. So
Oh
it's just
yeah.
kind of fun. It's just kind of funny.
Ping pong.
I don't
Cool.
I don't know if you can install two things with Brew at the same time. I would guess no. It's probably
Mm,
I
I
think
don't know.
you can install a list of them, like, but uh, but I think in the documentation it's like this just because if there's other steps like you need to do brew services start Redis, for example.
Hmm.
And just to
Yeah.
explain what that does, so brew services is it's kind of like running daemon servers of things. So it will start Redis like you won't need anytime you reboot your computer or if you're going to use the app, you won't need to do anything because it will have been started. If for some reason you did want to stop it, you could run brew services stop Redis, um, which could be. Oh, okay. Yeah, this logo. Okay, yeah. Sorry, Acid Burn 974 is asking. It's because my microphone's on I'm on a what you call it, a mic arm, so it's angled differently. But
Hmm.
uh, also, no Acid Burns 974. I am not Ben from who created Dev. I could
We
pretend we're
will have
both from
Ben on
Canada.
later. Ben's
Yeah,
gonna come
Ben's gonna be
on
joining
in
us.
January.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, yeah, we have a few folks, and next week, Eve is it Porcello or Porcello? I'm thinking it's Porcello, but because
I probably would have said Porcello, but Porcello sounds nicer, so we'll make sure we ask her. What
yeah,
is this?
so Eve, if I said your name incorrectly, I apologize. But Eve's gonna be on the stream next Wednesday. We typically do these on Wednesdays. Uh, we did a ton during Hacktoberfest because there was a lot of contributions and we did pairings and stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
but for long term, it's kind of hard to manage doing like 4 streams a week every week and also doing software development. So
Yeah.
come the new year, like after Eve's on the show next week, it'll be the holidays. So then we're going to be off until January, but then we'll be back, and then we have some more exciting folks. Gant Laborde from Infinite Red's going to be joining us. We'll probably be doing some AI fun stuff. Also, Jerome Hardaway from Vets Who Code's going to be joining us. Ben, like Christina mentioned, who's the creator of Dev and one of the co-founders of Forem, will be on there too. And we've got some more folks coming. I'm just not going to spill the beans yet. But yeah, pretty excited for all the folks we have on there. And
Yeah.
also, we're going to be alternating between a walkthrough Wednesday, which is something like this, or having a guest on, like Eve. And we'll alternate that with every other week. We'll probably do pairings with the community members. This is what we did a lot of this during Hacktoberfest, and I had done some prior to Hacktoberfest too. But we're probably going to alternate it like that. So if you are interested in pairing in 2021, I'm going to drop a link here, and it's just a form that you can submit. It's an Airtable form. You can, if you're interested, just put in your info there, and we'll definitely get in touch and stuff.
Yep.
The only real criteria is maybe Todd might be interested on coming on the stream. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the one thing that is a blocker is you do need to have an okay internet connection because we are streaming. So I would say if you're able to, do a Zoom call, fine. Or if you already use Discord and you're fine on there, then you should be good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna drop that link. It's on my own site just because it was a Airtable that I had created a while ago, and uh, anyways, if you click on that, that'll redirect to the form. Okay, so this is still installing.
No, it's
Okay.
not. I came up to show the error just so people know why I got an error. I already have it installed. So it's done. Brew
Okay.
just also did a cleanup at the same time, and that's where we're at right now.
Okay. Cool. All right, so let's move to the Redis installation.
Okay.
You might have this installed, uh,
Yeah.
but we can do a quick check. Do run redis-cli ping
Mhm.
the step there around just 2/3 of the way
Mhm.
down. Okay, so it's not running, but let's try brew services start Redis. The
Okay.
the brew install Redis is pretty straightforward. It's just gonna install it. But I just
Mhm.
want to see if okay, so now it's started.
Okay.
So we're gonna skip the brew install Redis part, but it's pretty straightforward. It just installs the brew package, and then you do the brew services start like Christina just did. And now we're just
Mhm.
gonna make sure. Okay, you did the ping. All right, so that just makes me giggle all the time. So if anybody's
Oh,
ever played, yeah, ping pong. Okay, cool. So we have that all set up. So let's move to Elasticsearch, and this is where you ran into issues.
yeah, so
So
let me talk about this a little bit real quick. There's a
yeah,
recommended way to install this, and then there's also a way to install this with brew, like homebrew. And since I was already doing homebrew with everything else, I started going through that and doing homebrew. The problem that we came into was previously, this has been updated. Previously, we right here we had a specific like install of an Elastic tap, I guess. Like there's a specific one,
yeah,
and we could no longer use that one anymore. The team didn't realize it wasn't something you could use anymore because everything has been updated. And so now we just grabbed the most, we grabbed the most recent one by doing this
okay,
Elasticsearch slash
okay.
OSS.
Okay, and just to briefly explain those commands, like brew is
Mm-hmm.
it's a play on like the word like beer, like brewery and stuff.
Yeah.
So when you say brew tap, it's like tapping a keg, and they just use all this beer terminology, but essentially I think elastic slash tap is like go get the package from the
Mm-hmm.
from the repository wherever it's stored. Then you do the
Mm-hmm.
install, and then I think brew pin just means keep it at that version.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's run those three commands.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's start with Elastic. And again, I may have these. I can't remember if we ever went through and got them all. So you may see another like error or just something telling us we already have it. Okay. And
Yeah.
then install the correct one, which I don't think I have because I think I was putting in the other version. So.
Okay. And I would say for things in the documentation in regards to Mac, if there's a brew option, I I would I would suggest using that instead because it's typically a lot easier. It's like npm or yarn, like I was saying,
Mm-hmm.
so you can just install. If you do want to do it the other way, there's no problem doing it that way too. It's just a few more steps.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Lots of number threes going on the right side here. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm guessing it's downloading, but
Yeah, that's what it did with the other one too, with the image one.
okay, cool, cool.
Just give it a minute, I guess.
Yeah, and then we'll run that. And then just like we did with Redis, we'll need to start the service. And what that will do is that's gonna have the Elasticsearch package that we installed running as a daemon process, meaning it's continually running in the background, so you don't need to worry about it when you go to run the app. If for whatever reason you did need to stop it, you could just run brew services stop. Um, Typically, and because most of my work in my day to day is working in Forem, so I just have all these things started and running. It's just easier for
Mm-hmm.
me. I do work on other projects outside, so but I don't know. It doesn't seem to affect the other stuff I'm working on.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then then once that's done, we can also check the version installed. I think the version I have is like 7.5.2 or point 0.4, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, previously we had like a specific version because we didn't want to go up to seven. Which one did you say you had? 7 point.
I had 7.5.2 and there's like newer versions now. And
Yeah, I think that was the version that they needed to stay on, but then there was newer versions, and with the way that you can now tap in with Brew, and also just the way the Elasticsearch was working, you could no longer pick the specific like instance that we had, and so then we had to just change it so that we have
yeah,
it
yeah.
this way. So
Cool.
yeah. I don't know
All
what
right.
this is doing though.
It's like going 0,
Uh,
1, 8%, but I don't think you had it installed. So we'll let that run.
yeah.
Let's go down in the documentation while that's going on. Just see if there's
Hmm.
anything else we can do.
That's
Okay.
it. There are, just so people are aware of, anytime someone comes through like a problem, especially on the team, they can put it into this like troubleshooting. And so if you're having some issues with some stuff, you might be able to find it in this little section of troubleshooting. And then we also have, so look, we do have installing form. It's just all the way down the bottom.
Yeah, so I think just some of the order, and there you can see also it talks about HTTPS or SSH, but
Mm-hmm.
I would like we said at the beginning of the stream, I would rework it so that we clone the repository as like the first thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then that way we have like the rest of the documentation will make a little more sense.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing we can do while that's going on, I don't know if there's anything else aside from Elasticsearch before we get to this part.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think this is the next part. Yeah.
okay, so what we can do is let's let that run in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do next is we need to set up the environment file. So like maybe if you open up your Visual Studio Code,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I said code very in a weird way for some reason, like some weird soft Irish accent code. I don't know. I am part Irish, but anyways. Okay. Yes, folks, just so people know, some people do use light themes in case people are upset about
The reason I
that.
use a light theme now, I used to always use dark, is because I have astigmatism. And the dark themes are actually worse for that, and they cause problems so that you can't see the white text on like the black background. It all becomes blurry,
Oh, no
really
way.
bad. And I didn't
Uh,
even realize it for a long time that that was why I was having a problem because I was like, oh, I like dark theme better. This is so bright. Until I finally like put two and two together. I also read more about it, and yeah, the light themes are better for people who have astigmatism.
okay, I
So
wasn't aware of that. I would have thought the opposite, but
yeah, me too, but apparently not, and it is way better. I can I don't have like
okay.
blurry text anymore. I just thought my eyesight was getting worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were gonna say it was more for if you're teaching folks, because I
No, even when I was teaching, I found a lot of people liked the dark background when I was teaching, and I usually had the dark one, but I do feel like this kind of pops more and shows people more. So, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So what you can do now is it's mentioned in the documentation there that you had open, but let's open up a terminal in Visual Studio Code. And in here, we're in the forum root folder. That's great. So we want to do a copy. So we want to do cp, which is the Linux copy command,
Okay.
space,
Oops.
uh,
See.
it's env and just press tab and it should autocomplete. Uh, if it
Oh.
doesn't, okay, it's if you go to the documentation, I think it's just called env.sample or env underscore sample.
Okay, give me a
Um,
second. Do I need to do the gem bundler that was in there as well?
that'll be like one of the last things about that'll be when we run the setup. So it'll run the gem bundle install and all that. Uh,
Okay, I'm just going back to the documentation on a different screen real quick, and I'm
yeah.
going down to get. So, okay, you said I need to do CP and ENV, and then what am I grabbing from there?
It's there's a file in the documentation. I think it's called env underscore sample.
Yep.
So you want to copy that file to a new file called .env, and I'll
Okay.
explain that in a sec. Oh
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's
I want to CP. Oh, do I need dot .env?
oh yeah, it might. Oh yeah, it's .env sample. Sorry. Yeah, press tab and it should autocomplete.
Yeah, it's still not. Okay, so
Okay,
sample.
and then you're just gonna copy it to if you do space and then just .env. And yes, because Todd was saying because Todd did a talk on color contrast on the weekend, and he was
Mm-hmm.
talking about astigmatism there too. I don't know if you have a link for
Nice.
that yet, Todd, or not, but if you do, feel free to drop a link about that talk. I'm sure it's super interesting.
Mm. Okay, so
Um,
I got no such file or directory. Did I spell something wrong? Hold on.
you're in the
Let's
forum
try
folder.
this.
Do ls. We're gonna just list the files
Okay.
because it's not gonna show up on the left. You'll have to do ls space dash a to show all the files because it's a hidden file, I believe.
Dash A. Oops.
Okay, and there should be in the list of files there should be a env file.
Mm,
I don't know why it's not there. It's definitely in the repository,
hmm.
unless it changed recently.
Should we
Let
go
me
to the
just check on
repo and
my
check?
computer.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's called .env underscore sample.
I mean, there's env file.
Yeah, that's weird. Check the repository maybe, but I I'd be surprised if it's missing. Or maybe some recent
This.
change. .env. Yeah, if you scroll up a bit more.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, I don't see it.
Well,
.env. Very
maybe my
weird.
clone's bad. No, I just cloned it. So,
Yeah.
or my fork might have been off.
Okay. Well, what we can do is just do type in create a new file. So
Okay.
do type touch like
Mm-hmm.
touching something, .env,
Yep.
and then press enter. That'll create the file. It's a hidden file because it starts with a dot. But now
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if your Visual Studio Code set up for this, but type code space .env and it should open the file in VS Code. If it doesn't,
.env.
yeah. Okay. It's opening another Visual Studio Code, but okay. So yeah, we can close that. So man,
Um,
why does VS Code want your confidential?
I don't know.
Uh,
They keep doing this to me and they yell at me when I say no. It's been a new thing ever since you and I tried to do the like live share. It's been doing that.
okay.
So, I don't know what's going on.
Uh, cool. Yeah, so I don't know why you don't have that .env underscore sample file, but let's go
Hmm.
to the GitHub webpage for our repository. And what we're
Okay.
gonna do is we're gonna copy all the contents out of the sample file.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
So
I can show this too so people can see what's going on here.
yeah, so
Okay. Uh,
I'll mention a little trick that I mentioned to you a while ago, but if you press the letter T,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
what
Just
this
T.
does is, yeah, it allows you to search for files in GitHub. So if you type .env, so there it is. So maybe
Nice.
for whatever reason it didn't grab it, I don't know, but let's open that file so you can just go there and then click raw at the top there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's just going to show you the actual contents. Let's copy all that. So just
Yep.
Command A. And then in your
Okay.
.env file, we'll come
Uh-huh.
back there
Okay. And
and then
paste
we're
it.
going to paste it in. Yep. Now, we're not going to do anything right now in here aside from save it.
Okay.
And what this is this is a bunch of configuration stuff uh, for for doing development, but it's also the real applications that like Forem instances use this too, except they have
Mm-hmm.
their users or their community specific settings. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this file is used we don't need to do it now, but you can add like your GitHub secrets and stuff to set up OAuth. You can do this for Twitter as well. We support Facebook
Mm-hmm.
as well now. And then there's a bunch of default settings in here which are all really meant for local development. The reason
Mm-hmm.
why this file is not in the project is because it's a bad security practice to commit a .env file because it can contain sensitive information, which is why we
Mm-hmm.
have this .env underscore sample file that we copy
Okay.
typically. Now, the one thing for folks that end up working in the repository need to know is this .env file, since it's not in the repository, I'd recommend keeping a copy of it somewhere. I
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing super secret in here aside from like once you set up OAuth for GitHub and stuff, it's like an app of yours on your GitHub account. So if somebody
Okay.
does get hold of that, they can obviously use it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be kind of useless because it's really only set up for local development of Forem. But I typically keep a copy of this. I don't know if you're on a Mac, maybe you just rely on Time Machine if you end up losing it. But I typically copy it because every now and then, because I end up switching branches a lot from doing PR reviews and stuff. Every now and then I
Mm-hmm.
need to clean up my repository, so I end up deleting this file. So I just have a
Yeah.
shortcut to copy it back.
Okay.
So everything in here is good enough to start the application.
Okay.
And then other
I'm gonna
stuff
do one
like
thing
setting
and
up
just
GitHub.
check on my terminal real quick. Okay, we're good there. Just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that that was still not doing something crazy with all the hashes.
Okay. Uh, I've just gotta send somebody a message on Slack while that's installing. But what we can do is if you go back to the documentation, you
Okay.
can probably at this point and let's see what did the terminal say? Like how far along is it?
I'm good. I got to do the other commands for
Oh
elasticsearch,
yeah.
which we haven't done yet. But let's go ahead and do whatever we're doing right now first, so we're not jumping back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to
Yeah.
go back to documentation. I didn't think it was that far back. All right. And we were all the way down here in this section.
Okay. All right. So we created the env file. You see how it said do cp.env sample.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what happened when you grabbed your clone of your
Yeah.
fork. Maybe your fork of the repository was out of date or something, because you
Yeah.
did. I think it got. I think that .env sample file got added like right around Hacktoberfest, because I remember one day
Oh, then
I
mine's
had to
probably
switch it.
outdated.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
which brings up another point is this is stuff you can find on GitHub, but if you're
Mhm.
working as a contributor and you're working on a fork, which is your copy of the repository, you need to occasionally update it, because if you're working on a pull request and maybe there's just a lot of changes and some of them could be related to files you're touching, you need to update the repository in your fork.
Mhm.
So typically what you do is you merge the changes from what's typically called the upstream, which means where the fork is coming from, which is the Forem code base. So that's something you would need to do occasionally, and this is exactly what's happened in Christina's case, because I remember she set it
Mhm.
up pretty much when she started, which was not October 1st, but like I think like the last week of September, and you probably
Well, I
haven't
actually
updated it since.
forked it. I forked it like probably a month or two before that because I contributed something, but I ended up only needing to contribute to like changing the documentation, so I didn't end up needing the fork. But I had forked it at that time, so I'm probably pretty behind on there. So, yeah.
Okay, all right. So, but that's why you didn't have that file. Uh,
Mhm.
uh,
Yep.
just a sec here. So yeah, so at this point, let's run those other commands in the terminal there
Okay. Which
for
ones do I want to do? Do I want to do this command or do I want to do the elasticsearch?
well, let's go back to the Elasticsearch, because did you do the brew
No.
services start? Yeah, okay, yeah, so let's do that.
No, I
So,
need to pin it. Um,
okay, yeah,
which I didn't do yet. So I need a pin and then we need to do the other one. So going back
yeah,
into the
okay,
terminal, I'm going to pin this. And then we want to do this brew services to start Elasticsearch. Okay.
okay. Right, so that's good. Sorry, I was multitasking there. I had to
That's
answer
okay.
something in Slack. All right, so that's good. So now let's make sure that okay, it's started. That's perfect. Okay, so now if we go to the documentation, that should have been the last thing before we actually do the installation.
Mhm.
Uh, you can run brew
Nick, I just
info
want to
elastic.
ask you one thing real quick. I know you scheduled this till one or till about this time. So if for some reason you have other meetings or something, just let me know. We can always do the rest of this another time. But just wanted to let you know.
Yeah,
We have
I can go till 3. So
okay. All right.
but there's not much left to do in the install. It
Mm-hmm.
just might take a while to install.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's do the installation of Forem now.
Okay.
Okay. So first thing we need to do is you said your Postgres app is running and it says the server is running. Okay.
Yep.
So that's good.
I can actually
Okay.
bring that up now.
Okay.
There we go.
So yeah, so this is the easiest way to have Postgres on here, and when you start it for the first time. So if you just stop the server for a second,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is what it looks like the first time you open it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to do start, and then you'll see by default Postgres installs a database that is by default named after your username on your laptop, and then
Mm-hmm.
the Postgres one, I think, is just for maybe meta information. Template one, I'm not sure what that is,
Yeah.
but it is another database. Okay, so now we're going to run, if we go back to the root folder of the Forem repository in your terminal, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
run bin/setup.
Okay. Bin slash setup.
Now,
Oh, what is wrong with my? There we go.
okay, So what this is going to do, these aren't errors, it's just saying it's missing gems. So this is the bundle
Mhm.
install I was talking about. So
Mhm.
bundle is, once again, for those familiar with Ruby, you probably know what it is, but if you're somebody that works in the front end, again, it's something similar to like Yarn or npm. And
Mhm.
so when you do bundle install, it just installs all the Ruby gems, which are the name, that's what packages in Ruby are called. So it's going to install all of those. And then if we go
Okay.
back to the terminal there again,
Mhm.
the other things it's going
Oh,
to
what
do
just happened?
is, I think you have
There we
two
go.
open maybe.
Yeah, go away.
Okay. So it's still installing gems here. After that,
Mhm.
it's gonna do some other things. It's going to seed the database, meaning it's gonna fill it with not dummy data, but just, well, yeah, I guess dummy data, but user data that you'll have. So when you open up your application, you're gonna see some fake posts. I think it's using Faker. Uh, it's a Ruby gem, but there's also faker.js that you can use to just generate random names and text and so on. So it creates
Mhm.
articles like that. It creates other things like the users that wrote those fake articles. It sets up a few
Mhm.
other things, but basically anything database related. That's in a file called seeds.rb. If you want to open that in there, I can show briefly while that's running here. You can just do Command P. Oh, you don't need to search. If you just press Command P, you'll get the
Okay.
omnibar at the top of VS Code there, and then just type seeds, and then you can press Enter, and then we can just
Okay.
drag
Let
down the
me bring this
terminal
down.
window.
Hold on. Yep.
Yeah. So in here, you don't really need to know what's going on here, but basically it's creating fake data in here. So it'll create blog posts, users, potentially some notifications.
Mhm.
It'll set up what else? I think it sets up a fake connect channel too. The other
Okay.
thing, which I don't know when I think it got done a couple months ago, but I didn't realize this. But by default, you end up with a forum admin out of the box that you can log into the application with right away.
Oh,
I ran
nice.
into this issue. It's actually documented, but I have been using
Mhm.
GitHub forever to log in as myself. I didn't know
Uh-huh.
about this admin user. It's something that popped in about 2 months ago. So
Okay.
now, because what happens now is when you go to install the application, you're not going to have GitHub or Twitter OAuth enabled, even if you create those applications in GitHub or Twitter, because you need to
Mhm.
log in as an admin to say enable those. So the first thing you need to do is once the application is installed, you need to run, you log in as uh, I think it's admin at forum.local. It's in the
Mhm.
documentation if you, uh, and then the password's just password. Uh, Obviously, that is a horrible password, but this is for local development. And if somebody is hacking your local development of forum, well, they're probably hacking the wrong thing. Uh,
Yep. Is
yeah.
it like the back
Uh,
end guide maybe?
yeah. Or maybe look for forum.local and it'll show up.
Okay. Dot local.
Yeah. Uh, Maybe not. Okay.
Nope.
It's definitely in there.
Yeah.
It's probably in the backend guide for sure. Admin guide maybe.
Yeah, we
Because
have that
what?
too.
Yeah, I think it's probably in there because when I ran into this issue last week, I thought I broke something, or it was at the start of this. Yeah, near the end of last week, I thought I broke something in my branch, and Josh
Mhm.
updated the documentation to talk about it because it was
Okay.
already documented, but it wasn't clear that you had that user. I'm just trying to
Mhm.
remember where it is though. But anyways, you'll end up logging in as the forum admin, and then that's how
Okay.
you'll go through the onboarding process to set up your account. That's what happens for all users, and then
Mhm.
from there you'll automatically, you're an administrator by default, so you'll have access to configure the application. So at that
Mhm.
point, you can go to the admin panel and say like, I want to add, you know, OAuth for GitHub or Twitter or Facebook, or I just want email login.
Hmm.
The other thing too is since we've moved to Forem, you can also have private Forem instances, meaning it's like invite only and stuff. So that stuff can get set up. That didn't exist when it was just dev prior, because dev was
Yeah.
always just anybody can sign up. Excuse me. Cool. All right. Yeah, so this will finish installing that.
Hmm.
And the other things the setup is going to do is it installs all the front end dependencies via Yarn. So there's a bunch of stuff in there, but it will install like Webpacker, which is the package that links to it. All the other stuff we have, like for example, in the front end, we have Preact as well. There's all the ESLint stuff that gets installed. We also use some things for when folks commit stuff to the repository. It's called a pre-commit hook. So as you go to commit your code, say I changed a JavaScript file, for example, if there's any tests
Hmm.
associated to it, the test will run. It's going to make sure all the ESLint is good. And if none of that is, if at least one of those things fails, then you can't commit it. There is a
Okay.
way to override. There is a way to override it. You can use. I'll link my blog post on how you set this stuff up.
Hmm.
But basically, if you bypass it, yes, you'll be able to push your code, but the build will fail because we had a bunch of ESLint issues in the project a while ago. It took about a year to get rid of all of them. So
Yeah.
now what happens is the build will not even build if there's at least one ESLint error. So
Okay.
you can override it, but it's kind of futile because you're gonna end up not being able to get your build working. So
Yeah.
all right, I'm just gonna load this up. I'll find that link. It's not forum specific, but it talks about these tools. So I'm just gonna paste that in. So this is setting up Husky, ESLint, all that stuff. And I mentioned how we do it in Forum too, I believe.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, I will have a hard stop though at 3 p.m. because I
Yeah.
have a meeting with Molly, our engineering manager. But
Yep.
so that's kind of important. But okay, so we're right at the end of the installation here, of the setup, sorry. So everything seems to have gone well. I think it's going to spit out one more thing in the console and then it's done. And from there, we're going to run bin/startup. And what bin/startup
Okay.
is going to do is, uh, as the
Setup
name
or
implies, it's
startup?
going to startup. Or if you're
Okay.
from Boston, startup. I don't know.
Mhm.
Sorry. My kids have been watching. Have you ever seen the Carmen San Diego
Is there a
TV show?
dash?
No,
Then
it's
slash.
just bin/startup. Okay, so it's a valid error, I guess. So let's see what's going on here. Proc dev. Try running the command foreman start dash f procfile.dev. I'm curious it might give more errors. Let's see what it says. Oh no, I can't run it like that. So what is wrong? If you do um,
Hold on one second. Mhm.
it's something the setup seemed to be correct, so I don't think it's that.
Okay,
Because
so
typically,
the bin slash setup was doing all the setup and putting out, and then did the bundler, and so now we're trying to do startup actually, just so I know where we're at.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
bin/startup, what it does is, I know it's giving an error there, but it will
Mhm.
start the server, which is Puma, I believe, for Rails, and
Mhm.
then it's also going to build the the Webpack assets. It's also going to run
Mhm.
Sprockets, which is the Rails asset pipeline for converting our Sass to CSS, and any vanilla
Mhm.
JS we have too, getting that bundled up. So I'm not sure why you're getting the error though. Uh, try running it again. I'm sure it's going to error out again, but
Okay.
and I
Okay.
see
Ben
there's a
slash
change.
startup. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just failing. I see there's a file change in the left there in your Visual Studio Code. I just want to see what it is.
Okay. The
Okay,
dot .env.
it's okay. I wonder I wonder if it's because your fork is older
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have the latest, because that .env file is associated with the latest code. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that could possibly be the error. Um,
Okay.
so what we can
So
do
let's just.
is
Okay. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, since we have about 20 minutes, and I know we should probably start wrapping up because you have a meeting. Let's talk through like what we should like what would happen. Like I know we don't have it, and
Okay.
at this point, I would probably need to update my fork, like go through the steps of like updating and getting onto
Yeah.
the right like fork, and then I could possibly do this. But let's talk through like, okay, we've gone through this documentation for macOS. At this point, when I did bin slash startup, if it was working right, what would be happening here?
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the startup didn't work, but I'm like almost 100% certain it's because you don't have the latest code. But everything else is in a good state. Like the bin slash setup installed correctly on the first time, which
Hmm.
is
Yep.
pretty awesome. So that's got everything set up. The database, we have all the back end packages installed, the Ruby gems through the bundler. Um,
Hmm.
we've got all the pieces set up in terms of infrastructure for the application. So we
Hmm.
have, Redis is running for caching. We have Elasticsearch running, which is used for our search. We have ImageMagick installed, which is for image processing, typically for resizing the images, like I mentioned at some point during the stream.
Hmm.
Aside from that, what else was there? Um, I think those were the big ones. Yeah, we have Yarn installed. Uh,
Hmm.
Node.js is installed as well. Um,
Yep. So
and
we,
we've
we
plugged.
spent the time going through this installation guide for Mac OS, and we went through all of these steps. The steps we were just trying to do after the installing Forem, which was at the end, although we'll probably move some of this towards the beginning. But this stuff was at the end here. What we were going into was this kind of afterwards, you can get into this like getting started, and it would have been the starting the application. And that's what failed for me, just so people know like where we're at. This failed, we think, because I'm on an older fork of
Yeah,
Forum that I need to update.
yeah, I'm almost certain it's that because the configuration file, the .env file that I had you copy, is the latest
Mm-hmm.
from the
Yeah.
master in our repository.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It would be good to maybe once you do get latest and then run, just maybe I guess let me know or let the community know if that was it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm almost 100% certain, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, so those are all the steps that we've done to install the Mac OS version installing Forem on Mac OS. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it can seem intimidating, like there's a lot of stuff. There are other ways to run the application, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, in my experience, a lot of folks just like to have it running locally. But there is
Yeah.
Gitpod as well, which we're not going to go over because there's not really much to install for Gitpod. It's running virtually in a container, and then you can access it on a website. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think
We
in the
might
new year,
try to
yeah,
do a Docker one at some point, going through the Docker, because Molly and I talked about this. A lot of people, especially front end developers, kind of like doing that instead of having to go through all the steps we were having to do. So at some point, we might try to go through a Docker setup with Form.
okay, yeah, and I know some folks had talked about Docker running really slowly for them. I know there was some improvements to speed it up. Joe Doss, who works on our team that handles a lot of the stuff with containers. I believe he made some speed improvements there. So yeah, we can definitely check that out. I think doing a Windows installation would be super important because
Hmm.
I don't know the the split in terms of operating systems, but I would guess that the majority of folks are probably on Windows.
Yeah.
Linux as well. We don't want to forget that too. Uh, I'd say Linux would probably be an installation similar to the Mac one. There's obviously a different. There's no homebrew on Linux, but it uses sudo. What is it? Sorry, apt-get, I think. I forget. Um, but it's kind of similar to the Windows installation because the Windows installation is
Hmm.
actually using WSL, which is the Windows subsystem Linux. So you're essentially running Linux on
Okay.
your Windows machine. And the reason we need to
Hmm.
do that is because that's the only way you can get Ruby on the machine. I
Hmm.
think if Ruby wasn't a requirement, then WSL might not be required. But uh, anyways,
Yeah.
I'll close that up there. So yeah, so that's just to recap. That's pretty much where we're at. I think we're in pretty good shape with what we did for the Mac OS installation. And
Hmm.
like you mentioned, Christina, we're gonna slice and dice this video up a bit to add some of these components to the documentation, so
Yeah.
that not only do you have the written documentation, you can actually see us going through some of the things, and hopefully folks find that helpful as well.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. Uh, I'm not sure when we're gonna do the Windows installation and the Linux one, but it's definitely in the new year, but not sure
Yep.
what date exactly yet.
Yep.
And
But
yeah, cool. And yeah, I think the last thing I'll say just before we go is, as I mentioned, we have Eve Porcello on next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Also, that's 6 p.m. UTC time. She'll be talking to us about GraphQL. She's very knowledgeable in that space, and she's an amazing
hmm,
educator. I think she's done some LinkedIn stuff too, I believe, because I know you've done your LinkedIn
LinkedIn and
stuff.
Egghead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So super excited to talk to her next week. I don't know that much about GraphQL aside from, I mean, I know what its purpose is, but I haven't really done any aside from some in Gatsby. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so looking forward to that. And yeah, so be sure to subscribe to the stream so you can get the time when we go live next week. And yeah, that's right. Hell on Earth, this 1080p stream. All right, I got your back. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week. And I gotta flick the switch off.